Live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast on 97.3 ESPN. We got another switcheroo for you today. We swapped Geoff Mosher and Andrew DiCecco again this week. Andrew will be back on Football at 4 tomorrow. Geoff Mosher joins us today here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Yell alongside Deshaun Hendricks here on 97.3 ESPN as Geoff Mosher, as all guest appears on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Of course, the Inside the Birds podcasting network. You got Jeff and Adam Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tales from the Blind Side, Grilling the Birds with Trey Thomas and Derek Gunn. See, Jeff, I got the name right this time.
You did get it right. I'm very happy about that. I'm also happy to be hanging with Hennig and Hendricks today. That's pretty good.
Deshaun, see, he had something nice to say about us. There you go.
Yes, listen, he knows I'm a big fan of him, and I got a little bone to pick with Jeff, though.
Oh, geez, here we go.
He said that Josh Hennig could play safety, and I was wondering, has he seen Josh Hennig run with those knees?
That's a good point. I was basing it on the calves. Josh has gigantic calves, so I feel like he could at least be a box safety and kind of, you know, you don't have to cover too much, but we can just put him in the box and have him make some tackles.
I feel like you were hoodwinked, though, like I was. Like, I saw Josh and thought that he'd be the perfect athlete until I seen him run, and then he looked like he could be on the Eagles in the medical tent.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. But Josh does have some stories, as you know, Deshaun, from his playing days. And so if we could just, if we can get like 25% of what Josh used to be in high school, we might have been able to put him out there in the secondary for the Eagles.
There you go.
All right, enough about my potential athleticism based on my Instagram account. Let's get to the actual Eagles on the field, Jeff, because the Eagles season is officially playoff-wise over, but somehow the NFL has been hoodwinked into putting them on Sunday Night Football in the most important, non-important game of the Eagles season, because basically after they've been eliminated from the playoffs, now they can eliminate Washington from the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is really it's kind of some interesting primetime games that they've had on lately. I mean, you go back to the Thanksgiving game where, what was it? Was it Tampa-Detroit where that was I forget which one it was. I forget who Detroit played.
Tampa-Detroit was this past Saturday, so that was
right.
Saturday
It was,
games.
I think it was Houston-Detroit.
Houston-Detroit, it was Thanksgiving. That was
right.
Yeah.
Right. And then last night you had the Bills just completely housing the Patriots on Monday Night Football. And yeah, you're going to have a pretty ugly Sunday night game there. But look, the NFL thinks in market size, so they know that they were smart to say, look, we know that it goes through Washington, so let's let the Dallas New York game go first, because theoretically, if that were later and the Washington game were first, it might not matter. So they want everything that matters, and they want the big markets to be watching. They know Philadelphia will watch, even though they're out of it because it's a big market, and they know, of course, Washington's in a big market. So, yeah, they get an ugly product most likely, but they'll still get a lot of viewers out of it.
Now, in the aftermath of the game on Sunday, in a game where the Eagles were outscored 34-3 when Fletcher Cox left the game, is that, a lot of people, whether it's myself or Deshaun Hendricks or Hunter Brody yesterday, or even you and Adam on the podcast, the conversation is evolving to this whole situation with Doug Pederson. So where do you stand right now, Jeff, on the future of Doug Pederson?
I certainly think it's up in the air right now. Not that I think Jeffrey Lurie has not made a decision in his mind. I think Jeffrey Lurie knows what he wants, but that I would imagine that, a lot of what he needs to find out from here on out, it has to be involved in a conversation with Doug Pederson. He may want certain changes to be mandated within the staff or with how Doug Pederson goes about doing things. And if Doug is willing to do it, then it might save his job. If Doug is not willing to do it, that they may have to part ways. But they have to have that conversation first, and I don't think that they're going to have that kind of serious talk until after the season is over. Now, it'll probably happen very quickly after the season, but I'd be surprised if it happened before this season. Before this week here.
Jeff, is there a good chance that Doug could be fired? And my premise was that the quarterback question could loom over, because if Doug is really married to Carson Wentz, if you choose to go with Jalen Hurts, which is always up in the air right now, Doug may not want to start over. He may not want to be the guy to lead a rebuild.
Yeah, I think that all options are on the table, Deshaun. I certainly think he could be fired. I mean, four wins, 5 wins, if that's what it winds up with, is in this city not good enough. And you can then kind of look at the regression since winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, they made the playoffs the next 2 years, but the win totals kept going lower and lower, and then this is kind of a bottoming out scenario. Now, what I don't know, and I think what we'll find out by this time next week, is how much of the situation revolves around what you just mentioned, the quarterback situation. How much of Jeffrey Lurie's decision making is centered on the quarterback position. I have to think that I would think, this is just me speculating, that, and it's pretty obvious, but because of the money that they've got tied into Carson Wentz, and because that they've seen Carson Wentz play at a very high level before, that the number one thing that Jeffrey Lurie would want to do is figure out a way to fix Carson Wentz. And if it means, collaborating with Doug on finding the right people to do it, so be it. So, but obviously, as you mentioned, Deshaun, if they feel like Carson Wentz is not part of their plans and they want to start over with Jalen Hurts, which I think is risky in itself. And by the way, any of these moves are risky. Staying with Carson's risky. Going ahead with Jalen Hurts is risky. But then you're right. Doug may not want to be part of that, and Jeffrey may not even want Doug to coach that kind of this new wave that they're entering into, if that's the way they were going down. But my speculation would be that I think that they would want to try to figure out a way to make this work by fixing Carson Wentz first.
Before I ask my next question, I just want to make this general statement because I want you to know where I stand on it, because a lot of people have accused me of being a Wentz hater, which is far from the truth. I've always loved Carson Wentz. I just, I've seen the regression for years, and I'm being honest about what I see. Carson Wentz, when you talk about fixing him, and if Doug could do it, I mean, we've seen that the last couple of years, Doug and Carson, and I don't believe it's more of on the field thing. I think it's more of a mental thing, personally, with those two. I don't think they feel like they can work together. If that is the case, and you are going with Carson Wentz, which I wouldn't do, but if Wentz goes into, Jeffrey Lurie's office and say, hey, he can't be here if you want me here, what does Jeffrey Lurie then choose to do if he chooses to pick between a Super Bowl winning head coach and his high draft pick quarterback?
Are you saying if Carson Wentz says to Jeffrey Lurie that I can't work with Doug Pederson?
That I can't work with Doug Pederson. I want a new guy in here.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a hypothetical scenario that I'm not even sure would be the case. I don't think Carson is like that, where he would say I don't want to work with a head coach, because in this league, if you do that, then the next thing you know, you're traded off to another team, and you don't really get to control the environment and the scenario with that team either. So I don't feel like that's something that would happen. But I do, to kind of answer your question in a hypothetical, I feel like going back to what rebuilding Carson Wentz, it might take Jeffrey Lurie to bring in some people with Doug that are ready to kind of put the gloves on and go to work from day one, rebuilding this guy, everything with fundamentals and footwork and everything. And if Carson Wentz is not receptive to the changes that are being made and the coaching he's being given, whether it's from Doug or somebody else, well, that's why you've got Jalen Hurts there. I mean, it's not a nightmare scenario, I don't think, and I'll let you guys tell me what you think, but I don't think it's a nightmare scenario if you go into next year spending a lot of time trying to fix Carson Wentz, but you still have Jalen Hurts on the team as the backup.
Geoff Mosher joining us here at Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcasting network. Jeff and Adam's next pod drops tomorrow morning, early around 6 a.m. It usually drops. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your platform is. That way you get the alert and you know to download it and you're ready to go. Tomorrow they're in the podcast, Inside the Birds podcasting network. Geoff Mosher at Geoff Mosher on NFL. Jeff, my My instinct, though, is to say, do you really want to drag on a quote-unquote quarterback controversy in a city like Philadelphia that has such emotional reactions to every little thing? And considering the fact that Jeffrey Lurie, he is a little aware. He's not obtuse to the fan base. He's never been a guy who totally ignores what the fan base feels. Do you think he would actually allow such a messy situation continuing here in Philadelphia?
I mean, if Carson Wentz is rebuilt and playing really well, then I don't think it is a controversy. And like in any team in the NFL, you're going to have some teams invest a little bit differently in the backup quarterback, whether that's bringing in a veteran, as the Eagles have done in the past, or drafting one. Aaron Rodgers had to deal with them drafting the kid from Utah State, whose name escapes me,
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love, right? So, it's only a controversy if Carson Wentz is playing poorly and they have to call for Jalen Hurts, but that's always going to be the case in this city when the quarterback's not playing well. So I don't think you can take that and say we shouldn't have this scenario because it's going to get ugly in the city. The point is, do what you can to rebuild Carson Wentz. If he's good, then you won't have a controversy. If he's not good, then you've got Jalen Hurts.
And listen, Geoff, I have no problem if that becomes a scenario, even if I don't agree with it, because logically, this is a money situation. This isn't just you just get rid of Carson Wentz because of the salary cap implication. So by no means am I just poo-pooing that. But what I would say is that if Jalen Hurts goes out and plays a good game, you win or you lose, whatever, you got 4 games of where, okay, Jalen Hurts wasn't perfect, but he showed you enough to be intrigued by what he could do in this new stage NFL where the mobile quarterback is starting to become more premier. What I would say is that Carson Wentz, it's been reported, I don't know if it's true, I don't believe it, but it's out there, that he struggled because he doesn't trust the organization. They draft Jalen Hurts. They keep starting Nick Foles whenever he got hurt or, quote unquote, 2018, the back injury nonsense. Bottom line is it's been reported that he doesn't fully trust the organization. If there is some merit to, he does not want to come back unless he's the unquestioned starter, there's no competition, yada, yada, yada. Because even if you do bring both of them back, I do believe you at least have to have a competition. Carson Wentz hasn't done enough, in my opinion, in this league to just be given a job after his struggles all this year, especially when your backup proved that he's at least capable of playing in this league. Am I too off the rail with that? Is that something crazy?
Well, here's the thing, Deshaun. I get what you're saying, and I respect the opinion. I would say, though, that I think, and I would say this regardless, whether it was 4 great games or 4 lousy games, 4 games just really isn't enough to really know whether a guy can give you long-term sustainable success. I mean, I think it stands to reason that if Jalen Hurts becomes the quarterback for the long term, there's going to be some ups and downs, and there's going to be some times where you wonder if he can be the guy who has it to win. I mean, my God, everything that we said about Jalen Hurts after 2 weeks is basically what we were saying about Carson Wentz in 2017, if that's fair. So, even 2016 and 17. So, and again, Carson doesn't have leverage here. If he doesn't trust the organization, well, he's the one who signed the long-term deal for all that money that has him signed for years and years and years. So I'm sketchy on that report and what it really meant, as if does he not trust how the organization is building around him, or did he not trust whether it was told to him that he was the starter and he's just taking a step back here, and then now he's thinking that they're going to just completely bench him or trade him. I don't know what it is. As you mentioned, it's hard to really understand until Carson says it himself what's going through his head. But I don't see him pulling a power play, and as long as he's given the opportunity to be the starter, and if he's on the team, and if the whole point of the offseason is going to be to find people to help rebuild him, then you got to think that that's done in mind with him as the guy to be the starter until, whatever. If he doesn't play well again, then he gets benched, then so be it. But at least he'll be given that opportunity to start again.
You mentioned about communication, Geoff, and I think that's an important thing to bring up, because it's been discussed a lot by you and Adam on the podcast, Inside the Birds, and by other people who cover the team that we're really not sure who's telling who what sometimes. There's this, every press conference, I feel like now Pederson says he talks to Jeffrey Lurie every week. It's like, all right. We see numerous times that Howie's at practice with Doug. All right. I don't know what to do with that information. I feel like there's all these people involved. There's 200 people in the offensive coaching staff, right? So is there potentially just a lot of miscommunication going on in general, and that might be part of the reason why we're even sitting where we're at?
I don't know that there's miscommunication, Josh. I just think that, well, first of all, Doug doesn't really win the press conference all the time. So what he says at the podium sometimes by the next day is completely different. We've seen that before. And I just don't think the conversations about what they're going to do going forward have happened yet. And so right now, all anybody has to work with is just their own feeling on things. And Doug said on his press conference that he has all the confidence in the world that he's going to be back. And but he also said that his confidence lies within himself. So that to me, it doesn't sound like he's been given the thumbs up already from ownership. It's just that he feels that he's not responsible solely for the problems here and that he deserves the chance to fix the issues that are going on with the team.
Geoff, I just want to clarify, because when I was talking earlier about Jalen Hurts, I meant more so of a quarterback competition rather than just give Hurts the job. Right. So before I put the bow on that, I just wanted to say, so are you against that, a quarterback competition, or are you just on the verge of just saying, hey, Wentz is the guy next year, Hurts is the backup, let's see how Wentz starts out?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real fair about what a quarterback competition is, right? That's like OTAs and then training camp and who knows how many preseason games there are going to be next year. Like, I don't really think that there's a quarterback competition going on almost anywhere in the NFL, other than a few spots. Like maybe there was between Foles and Trubisky this past year, where they clearly kind of wanted to get Foles in there, and they gave Mitch the first few games and then put Foles in. Then they realized they made a mistake and went back to Trubisky, right? So I think that and this is just, it's not even my opinion, Deshaun, it's more like my analysis of it. If the next 3 weeks are spent reshaping the coaching staff and trying to bring in the right people to rebuild Carson Wentz, then I believe that you don't do that unless you plan to have Carson Wentz as your starting quarterback to start next year. And again, if things don't get better after I don't know how many games or whatever it is, then you've got Jalen Hurts in the back pocket. But I do not believe that they would make massive coaching staff changes, keeping Doug and bringing in other coaches to help rebuild Carson Wentz, only to then call it a 50-50 competition and give Jalen Hurts the job coming out of camp. I just don't see that happening. I think Carson would get the benefit of the doubt first to be the starter until sometime at the season where they might feel they have to make the move.
Geoff Mosher joining us here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcasting network. You can follow Geoff on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. Geoff, not to ruin all the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts conversation, but I did have other Eagles questions for you here on the show. And
sure.
To start with, I want to know your perspective on, the play of the defense after that loss, because I can't remember a time that one player would cause that kind of ripple effect on a team, because to be outscored 34-3, yeah, your offense failed to score against arguably one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but also your defense just seemed to lose something. Is Fletcher Cox really that much of a linchpin that defense was able to do a little bit to nothing the rest of the game?
No, I even said it on the podcast today. I was annoyed, and I still am, about some of the I think the broadcast crew brought it up too a couple of times that, ever since Fletcher Cox went out, the Eagles have been outscored like 24-3. I'm sorry. I know Fletcher Cox is a really good player, but he's not the reason that the defense was hemorrhaging points from the second quarter on. I just think that was way too loose of a connection to make there. I mean, they're obviously having a difficult time in the secondary with Michael Jacquet. and not only Michael Jacquet, some others, but really Michael Jacquet. And if anything, you could say Dallas made the adjustment where they were going to come out and they didn't try to run the ball much in the second half. And they basically gave Andy Dalton some pretty quick reads there. They came right out and scored immediately on the touchdown to CeeDee Lamb. And that was completely a play that they felt that they could win in that situation. And they did. I don't think it had anything to do. I mean, maybe Fletcher Cox is a great player. He can wreck, a game. He can wreck certain plays here and there. But, I mean, you watched that. The Dallas basically did whatever they wanted to do there in the second half. And I don't think Fletcher Cox could have stopped all of it.
So then how much of the accountability for the shortcomings of the team in the Dallas game, a game that I think a lot of people will expect to be much more competitive than it was by the end, how much of it falls on the players? How much of it falls on the coaches? Because I have trouble figuring out where that line is sometimes because, I feel like the coaches are still trying. They're out there trying to win, but there are times that maybe some of the players are either just ill-equipped because they're just not good enough, or maybe the players themselves are just maybe starting to mentally check out.
Well, I mean, you start with the obvious, right? And you have a practice squad cornerback out there against a really good wide receiving trio. Michael Jacquet is a practice squad cornerback who is asked to be a starter and then asked to match up against, two of the better wide receivers in the league. So, he did fight hard. He did fight hard against DeAndre Hopkins the week before. But eventually guys kind of regress to the mean or come back to, who they are. And what he is a practice squad corner. And Dallas completely picked on that as much as they possibly could. And they also picked on, CeeDee Lamb versus Nickel Roby-Coleman, and Roby-Coleman's not, he's always been a decent slot corner in his career, a pretty good one. Hasn't had a great year this year, but he's certainly outsized by several inches on CeeDee Lamb and was not able to hang with him. Then there were, they were without their three best pass rush. They were without Josh Sweat, they were without Derek Barnett, and then they were without Fletcher Cox. So that takes away a significant part of your pass rush. So I think that personnel certainly had a lot to do with it. Doug Pederson decided to, on 4th and 15, run a play instead of at least trying a 51-yard field goal indoors, or at worst trying to punt and pin them. Thought that kind of hurt them, although I do think they came up with a stop after that. And then the penalties, Josh. I think, would they have 12 penalties for 115 yards? This has been the most under-discussed part of the team's problems over the last 6 or 7 weeks. They have been among the most penalized teams in the NFL. All those false starts. I mean, how many makeable third downs and second downs got turned into second and long and third and long because of those false starts, particularly on Matt Pryor. I mean, I feel bad for Jalen Hurts. He was constantly behind the sticks, and at the end of the game, he's just trying to make some plays because that's what you got to do when you're down double digits. And when you start trying to make plays, right, then you're going to have your fumbles and your interceptions because you're forcing it a little bit.
That's a great point. My last thing, Geoff, and by the way, great analysis all the way around. And I want to preface this by saying that if anybody knew what a quarterback competition was, it'd be you. I watched you for weeks when it was Michael Vick versus Nick Foles, and you were my glue to the Eagles all those years ago. So please, I leave that all to you.
And by the way, Deshaun, to your point on that was not a quarterback competition. Behind closed doors, I can tell you this. I mean, I think I remember reporting it when it happened anyway. Michael Vick had to re-sign that year. He was going to be a free agent. He re-signed because they told him he was going to be the starting quarterback. All right. Now, Nick had just, finished the year before. But Chip Kelly did the whole, we're going to have a quarterback competition. Then he had different guys with the first team. He had Michael Vick going first team, and then he had Foles a couple days later doing it and back and forth. But it was always going to be Michael Vick to start the season because that's what they told him when he re-signed. So even that was not a real quarterback competition. It was just a publicly disguised one.
Okay. I mean, again, you would know better than me about all of that stuff because, you were there firsthand. That's why I kind of left that for you to undress. Gotcha. But last but not least, the Howie Roseman thing. Everybody wants Howie gone. Everybody thinks Howie can't draft. Realistically, Howie deserves a chance to kind of fix this, right? After all the pub he got in 2017 of pushing all the right buttons. You don't just fire a guy for the last 2 years, or do you?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the true criteria is for firing somebody or bringing somebody back, right? I mean, if the criteria for firing Doug is that the team has regressed under Doug, well, then you could probably say the same for Howie. But if the criteria is you won a Super Bowl, so Doug deserves to come back, well, then yeah, sure, you could apply that principle to Howie. I just think though that with Howie, there's got to be more of a communication, and everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction. I say this a lot about the most successful franchises you see, whether it's the Steelers, the Ravens, the Packers have been for a while, and certainly ever since Andy Reid went over to the Chiefs, they've been like that as well. You get you just know that the entire organization is pulling in the same direction, and they all are. If they're going to make a mistake, they're going to do it together. If they're going to win, they're going to do it together. And I don't know that kind of tone is set within the Eagles so that everybody feels like it's a team effort, win or lose, hit or miss on a draft pick. And that starts with the owner and the GM. So from the Howie vantage point, sure, he could stick around and fix this, but I don't think I just think that the whole organization in general has to be more on the same page. You can't have guys all having different agendas or not feeling what the other guy's doing, or you can't have analytics versus personnel becoming an issue. It's got to be a marriage, not a brackish type of relationship. And I just don't know that I feel the Eagles have reached that.
He is Geoff Mosher. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. The latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning, where Geoff and Adam Kaplan get all the information from their sources on the Eagles' loss to the Cowboys and start looking full steam ahead to Sunday Football versus the Washington Football Team. Inside the Birds, subscribe, download, don't miss out. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Geoff, great stuff today.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed listening to the show. Keep it up.